What's up, guys? Swift here. I recorded a bunch of videos this week for my NFL draft special that is releasing on April 20th. One of the segments was a little bit different than the others recorded. I recorded with Jordan T. Silvera, and we did a segment together where he gave me tired, wired, and inspired, three different players for every single position of the NFL draft. It stood out a little bit, so I went ahead and recorded again with Jordan last night and agreed that I should use the other video and release it on its own. So that's what I have for you today. Bear in mind, we went into this recording it thinking it was going to be in the NFL draft special. So if I reference that during the video, just ignore that. The NFL draft special is still releasing on April 20th. This was just extra footage that I got for you guys, and I thought you should see. Enjoy, and until next time, bear down. What's up, guys? It's that time of the year again, NFL draft time. I have my guy, Jordan T. Silvera, back again. Basically, he's an NFL scout. This guy knows more about players than I do, probably more than anybody. Jordan, what's up, man? Welcome to the show.
Swifty, I appreciate it as always. Thank you for having me. For far too kind of words. I mean, we're talking about Dan Brugler who just put out the Beast today. That guy knows more players than pretty much anybody. Him and Emery Hunt. But I appreciate you having me. Always a blast. And looking forward to talking NFL draft prospects with you, all Chicago Bears.
Awesome, and that's what we're doing today. We're talking about the Chicago Bears. Jordan brought an idea up. What we're doing today, it's called a little segment we're going to do with him. It's called Tired, Wired, or Inspired. So I'm going to ask Jordan about different positions, and he's going to give me three players. For tired, that's going to be a guy he's kind of tired of hearing about. Jordan will tell you a little bit more about it. But then wired, going to be someone excited to hear about. Right, they're going to get you pumped up. And then inspired, they're going to inspire you. Jordan, you want to explain that a little bit more better than I did
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, absolutely, Swifty. So exactly what you're talking about. The idea here is tired. If you're hearing me say a player I'm tired about, doesn't mean that I dislike the player. I'm down on them, but it's a player that I think is maybe being pumped up too much. I'm a little tired of hearing all the hype regarding a player that I don't think is necessarily worthy or warranting that level of status. Wired is exactly Swifty talked about. This is somebody I'm pumped to talk about. I'm excited about. If you end up, we're talking Bears here, but if for some reason he ends up on your team, you should be excited jumping, up and down because of who this player is. And then the idea of behind inspired is a player that maybe you haven't heard about. This is again, everybody likes to talk about those top 30 to 40 draft picks, those top 30, 40 guys. I'm here to kind of give you below the board, the bottom half of the board, and going, I know you may not know this name, but if you look at the tape and you watch this guy, I guarantee you're going to walk away going, well, I'm pretty inspired by that tape, and I wouldn't be mad if my team ended up with that guy.
Awesome. So for the Bears, we're not going to talk about quarterbacks. Sorry, if you guys are out there and you think we're going to talk about quarterbacks, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, like, you should probably go to another channel because Justin Fields is our guy. So we're going to go running backs. We're going to start out with running backs, and I want you to give me your three guys there. I know our running back room is it's not bad. Our running back room is not bad, but it's also Deontay Foreman and Khalil Herbert are entering the last year of their contract. Or I'm sorry, Khalil's here for 2 years. Homer and Foreman are both entering the last year of their deal, only 1 year deals. So I could definitely see Poles bringing someone in. Give me your guys at running back.
Absolutely. So let's go tired first. I'm not gonna, throw any shockers like, oh, it's Bijan or it's Jameer Gibbs. I like both of those guys. To me, Devin A-Chain is a guy that I'm tired of, just in the sense that I know that he's electric, he's exciting with his speed. I can't think of a runner with that slight of frame that's been able to hold up in the NFL and be able to produce. And I get it. We all want that fast guy that can get out to the races. But I guess what I'd say is I'll believe it when I see it with Devin A-Chain, running back out of Texas A&M. The guy that I would say I'd be wired about would be Zach Charbonnet. He to me is kind of, if you're not talking Bijan, that leader of that tier two guy, it's Zach Charbonnet, a guy that reminds me of Arian Foster. Zach Charbonnet is the running back out of UCLA, previously at Michigan, senior. Really smooth glider of a player, pass blocks well, catches the ball well out of the backfield. Really patient runner. Not going to necessarily break away on 75-yard runs, but a consistent player that pushes the pile, runs well behind his pads, and can get you a nice 6 or 7 yards every time he touches the ball. And that shouldn't be too unfamiliar here with a guy like David Montgomery, who recently departed to Detroit. unfortunately. So the next guy I'd say inspired. You probably have. This is a little bit of a cheat, but you've probably heard of this name already. But to me, it's a guy like Roshan Johnson. That is the backup running back to Bijan Robinson out of Texas, former quarterback. I believe he's a junior, could be a senior. I could be wrong there with all the different names swishing about. But Roshan Johnson, another guy that given an incredibly limited amount of carries because of Bijan Robinson. And the reason I'm inspired by a guy like him is so often when we talk about running backs, you're talking about guys that are coming into the league that have a lot of wear and tear on those tires. Roshan Johnson's a guy that's got plenty of tread, didn't get used a lot, has good size, 6 foot. I believe he's around 220. Decent speed, pass block and catch. And I think that he, to me, is if it's not Zach Charbonnet, kind of at that pole position for that second tier, I got a guy like Roshan Johnson. I'm right there with it.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, he's a guy who was, like you said, he was a backup to Bijan. He kind of goes underrated. I was really excited to be able to get to see him at the Senior Bowl, and then he got hurt and didn't wasn't able to finish out the week. Just a minor thing, but he did have to leave for the week, so didn't get to see him as much as I want. But yeah, it's a guy that intrigues me a lot. Good takes there. The guy from Pittsburgh, I don't know how to pronounce his name.
Oh, Israel Abikanda.
There you go, Avocanda. Thoughts on him, real quick? He's my sleeper guy. If I had to say, it was a sleeper in the draft.
See, and I definitely will answer you, Swifty. And I gotta say, I feel like I cheated with the Roshan, so I will give like an actual inspired one after this. Izzy Abaconda is a guy that I have to be honest. I think I would have preferred him sticking at Pitt for another year. One of the youngest players in the class, not as rocked up as he is and as athletic as he is. I didn't necessarily see an incredible amount of vision or an ability to, I talk about players kind of running behind their pads, pushing the pile, picking up extra yards. I didn't see that with him, and again, this is not like a knock on the player. I just think that there's a lot of people excited about him that and we'll see when it comes draft weekend, but I think that you're betting more on what's ahead, which isn't a bad prospect. But right now, I don't know how much value I'm going to get out of him immediately, unless I've got a great situation around him where we're talking about Ford F-150s driving through the lanes because my offensive line is blocking it so open that he'd have to be blind to not see the lane. So
Awesome,
again, I'm
awesome.
not down on him, but just not as high as I think others are. And then I did say I cheated a little bit with Roshan, so I will give you and I'll give you the sleeper here, the inspired, which I know people are going to look at the testing numbers and go, "Oh my god!" And let me give you a disclaimer: the USC Pro Day was held in a monsoon in Los Angeles. I'm a Southern California resident. It was pouring rain that day. But Travis Dye, running back out of USC, is a guy that I'm really high on. Again, not that I think he's going to be an all-star or superstar, but the type of career you want to talk about, like a Travis Homer, who's found a way to kind of stick around in the league, being a guy that's a useful utility player, kind of a secondary piece. To me, that's the type of career that I envision for a Travis Dye in the
I,
league.
I like that comp a lot. Travis Dye's a guy I actually haven't even watched much tape on. Obviously, I've seen a little bit. That's one of the things when you watch tape on guys like I go scout Jordan Addison, I'm gonna see some Travis Dye. That's just how it
Yep.
works when you watch a team play. But so I have seen a little bit of him. Not too familiar with his game, but that goes to show you this running back class is a really deep class. It's not the deepest in this draft, but it's in the top five. It's a class where there's going to be some really talented players still on the board in day three and possibly even to go undrafted. Just some names I'm going to throw out without context. Sean Tucker, Tank Bigsby. There's just a lot of guys you can find in that day two, day three range that I think are going to be really good players. Then we're going to move on to a position that, I mean, at this time last year was probably our biggest need. It's all we talked about. Alex Pierce, George Pickens. It was wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver. Things have changed a lot in the last year. We got Chase Claypool now. We got DJ Moore. So the need isn't quite as big at wide receiver, but you can never have too many weapons. And this is a draft where, when it comes to wide receiver, it's not top heavy. You got Jackson Smith Najigba up there, and to me, he's the only first round guy I have as a lock in the first round. He's Fields' former teammate. But then if you go to the day two and day three, once you start getting deeper in the draft, all of a sudden there's going to be some guys on the board that could be the best player available because there was maybe only one or two go in the first round. So go ahead and hit me with your wide receivers, Jordan.
Absolutely. Again, we'll always start with tired just to kind of get the little bit of the negative out the way. I'll give it a little bit of a twofer here. Tired with respect to Jalen Hyatt and his stock, as well as Quentin Johnston. Jalen Hyatt's the wide receiver out of Tennessee, speedster, vertical speed, long speed. And then you're talking about Quentin Johnston, the 6'3", not very shifty, but yak monster out of TCU. Guys that I think are being mocked high for, whether it be Quentin Johnston in his frame or the clear speed that Jalen Hyatt has. But I think when you take a closer look at the tape, there's a lot of concerning factors with those players. Johnston, as big as he is, isn't a physical player. Is a guy to me that comps a lot like an MVS kind of, a Robbie Anderson, now known as Jonathan Anderson, a little bigger than Robbie. These are guys that have speed and are able to kind of make use of that speed and be able to be kind of get the ball in motion, whether it's a crosser, whether it's an end around, a reverse, kind of like the Christian Watson from last year. The thing with Christian Watson, though, is you're talking about a guy that was 230, where Johnston's 215 and is a little bit more scraggly in that respect. And then Jalen Hyatt, a guy that in Josh Heupel's offense in Tennessee was constantly off the ball, getting switch releases and motion and never having to deal with press or jam, and then getting to run, full speed with that, 4-3 speed to be able to just take the top off of defenses in that very spread out wide Art Briles Baylor offense that Josh Heupel's running in Tennessee. So two guys that I think are being hyped up a little bit for their traits, but I don't necessarily see it with them, which takes me more to the kind of the wired conversation, which to me, if you're drafting either Josh Downs, wide receiver out of North Carolina, or Zay Flowers, wide receiver out of Boston College,
Ooh,
very similar kind of body types in the sense that they're look more like a Z, but they play bigger than. I've got to be honest. I think they play bigger than Jalen Hyatt and Quentin Johnston both. You're talking about Josh Downs has one of the highest contested catch rates in college, and is my wide receiver one in this class. I have a deep thread, probably about almost a year ago at this point, on Twitter, talking about how I think, to me, what Josh Downs represents is the best parts of Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and Jamison Williams games.
ooh,
Jamison Williams with the speed. You're talking about the refinement of Chris Olave, and then the explosiveness and body control of Garrett Wilson. So to me, Josh Downs is a guy that home run hit if you end up with, and then Zay Flowers. Let the tape speak for itself. He's a guy that was really the only weapon at Boston College for that, with Phil Jerkovich throwing him the ball, and consistently made plays despite his somewhat diminutive frame. Played on the outside, consistently came down with the ball, plays big. He's a guy that I get the body says slot, but I actually think he can totally play outside. And it's kind of an overplayed comp now, but a lot of people think he's Antonio Brown without all of the mental health
baggage.
issues and concerns and baggage. So two wired guys there, and then on the back end of it, I'll give a little bit of two inspired as well. The inspired guys for me are Jonathan Mingo, wide receiver, Ole Miss. To me, he is Kirkland or budget version of AJ Brown, and I know that that sounds like a diss, but I'm not going to sit here and give a guy the flowers of what AJ Brown has shown as the true Batman of the league. But to me, again, this is why you see places like Ole Miss drafting, or I guess you could say recruiting guys to follow in the footsteps of previous successors.
They like
In
big
the way,
receivers
yes,
like that. I mean, you see AJ Brown was there, DK Metcalf was there. It's easy to make those comps, but he does have those same skills. Yep.
and you're talking about Mingo, where I mean, one of my favorite things about him is he's got catcher mitts for hands. We're talking over 10-inch hands, to just pluck the ball out. And I know it's been ugly in that Ole Miss offense, just due to previously with Matt Corral's the quarterback, and there was a couple guys ahead of him in Drummond and Sanders, I believe it was last year. But to me, he's a guy that didn't get enough shine this year. And when you look at the testing and you compare just some of the things he was doing on tape as well, he's a guy that to me is a riser. And if you're not already aware of him, you will be soon. And then the other guy to me is Rashee Rice. I know that a lot of people are down on Rashee Rice just due to the Senior Bowl performance, but senior receiver from SMU, Southern Methodist University in Texas. Good school for wide receivers. To me, I think I may be the first year I've said it for a while, but I haven't heard anybody come to it. Is to me, he is the closest thing I've seen to Roddy White since Roddy White
Ooh,
came out of UAB.
I like that.
Um, a guy that has good enough speed. He can get deep on you, but it's not his number one calling card. But he plays with like wicked play strength. Attacks the ball at the highest point, plucks it down. Does have a little bit of drop issues. Nothing to me that's overly concerning, but at least this is the difference between like him and a Quentin Johnston. Is I like a wide receiver that's going to go up and fight, to go and get that bucket for the quarterback throwing the ball. and then finds a way to use his mass and his body. He's a rocked up dude, to really create separation when you've got a DB playing in the hip pocket. So he's really savvy and understands his body control and how to use it and weaponize it to open up space to pluck that ball out of the air. And he's a guy that I'm really fond of.
No, you're
For the
beautiful when
Bears.
you say that. I mean, I really love your comp because for me, when I watch Rasheed Rice, I've had a hard time finding a comp. Sometimes you just watch so many players over the years that you want to draw these like almost sometimes kind of lazy comps. And like you said it right there, the way he uses his body control and fights for balls, that makes me want to say Jerry Rice. But he's nowhere near the
Mhm.
receiver Jerry Rice is. But that name, he's got the Rasheed Rice.
Yep.
It sticks that in my head when I see him. When you see someone move and run those routes and use his body like he does, and then you see the Rice on the back. But yeah, he's a player that I think has really good potential. I think the Roddy White comparison that you just said is way better than anything I've thought of for him so far. I think that's a great comp. I think Roddy White, I'd say the biggest difference between the two, I think Roddy White was a bit more explosive. Just off the top of my head and what I've seen on tape from Rice is White had a little bit more explosion, but yeah, very, very good comp there. And
Thanks.
yeah, that was the wide receiver class. I mean, it's not top heavy, but once you get to the second day, there's going to be some guys on the board that you're like, hey, this guy wasn't a first rounder, but there's good wide receivers taken every year outside of the first round. A lot of times, the wide receivers in the first round don't even end up there. I've seen a lot of busts in the first round wide receiver over my days. So we'll go ahead. We'll move on from that. Do you want to go tight end? I
We
was
can go
gonna
through
go to
tight
the
end.
trenches. If you want to go tight end, go. We'll go ahead and let's go to the tight end position because it
We
is
can go.
it is also a deep class, just like running back. It's pretty deep at tight end as well.
Yeah, we can go tight end because you know me, Swifty. I tend to always bring a little bit of a different perspective here too. And the thing that I would like Bears fans to understand too is I get that wide receiver is the sexy position and the name that we're all thinking about. And oh man, what's the next wide receiver we're going to get? And you got Darnell Mooney and Claypool coming up that are going to need contracts and X, Y, and Z. But I think to me, you're entering an era in the league where the best value that you can get for a receiving option comes by way of a tight end. Tight ends are criminally underpaid, even the best performing ones. And so, if you can find a way to create an advantage and weaponize your offense by investing a draft pick in a tight end that's going to be cheaper than what you're going to have to pay for a wide receiver, that's beneficial. And you're talking about the Bears who already have a stacked wide receiver room from DJ Moore to Darnell Mooney to Chase Claypool to Valus Jones to Equinemius St. Brown. There's enough there where you don't necessarily need to add in that place. But where you can is you're looking at Cole Kmet, Robert Tunyon, and there's enough there to say, what if we add a couple more guys? So to me, I think he's great in his own right, but I see a lot of hype, and it just seems like the chalk pick to say that Michael Mayer is tight end one. I know he's Dane Brugler's tight end one. I think to me, I'm a little tired of it. I think that as good of a player as he is, there's nothing on his tape to me that shines as like his calling
That's
card. This is
special.
his superpower. He's a player that is refined and does everything right, but again, nothing spectacular. To me, the Wired pick, I don't know how we don't look at it other than to say Darnell Washington. Darnell
Yep.
Washington is a guy that I don't want to say he's Gronk or anything of that sort, but he's a very exceptional run blocker, all things considered, for a tight end, and is an athletic freak that I think we saw little bits of it at the combine with his catch. But you're talking about a guy that, frankly, didn't get a lot of opportunities because he's playing with alongside a future top 10 pick next year in Brock Bowers, the tight end out of Georgia. So to me, Darnell Washington is a guy that is a really interesting weapon for whoever takes him. And to me, it makes so much sense for the Bears. You've already got Cole Kmet, who blocks pretty well, all things considered, a traditional Y.
Mhm.
What if we get this athletic tight end that can stretch the field a little more, be this athletic monster for Justin Fields to throw to, but you're not losing anything by putting him in the run game? What does that do? That allows you to say, no defensive coordinator can scheme a game plan on us that, oh, when Darnell Washington's in, that's their athletic guy, and they're always going to run him on a route. And he's a blocking liability. So let's overload the front to that side and watch them suffer. You don't have any of those issues with Darnell Washington. So to me, for as a Bears fan, if you're talking about a way to weaponize and give Justin another option, Darnell Washington is the option that I'm wired about. I got to give Cam Latu. Cameron Latu is the tight end from Alabama, former linebacker, who's been a tight end for a little bit, gets slept on, doesn't a lot, but to me, he is an athletic player that plays with a tough tenacity to him that comes from that former linebacker background. Not the greatest blocker, but will still stick his face mask into a player's chest and be a try hard at the very best, and then still provides more athleticism than what you get from Cole Kmet, and would represent a nice alternative option, kind of that F tight end for the Bears.
The tight end position is deep. It's a deep class this year, but it's not. Now that we got Robert Tunyon, like it's not a huge need. So
Yep.
I don't want to spend too much time on it. But like you said, there are a lot of guys that are intriguing, and you can bring in a guy to pair with Komet long term as well. Also provide insurance. I think Komet does get a contract extension, but there's a chance. I mean, I even in the mock I did recently, I did a mock with 31 other people in this community that I'm in. I messaged you about it when I was taking a
Mhm.
pick. I took Musgrave in the with my second pick in the I
Not a
got
bad one.
it was like pick 80, I think. I got it for moving down from the
Yeah,
Vikings, but
that's
like
stealing.
that's what I thought. I was like Musgrave's a guy who could go in the first round, and it's this tight end class. That's one thing I saw. People kept taking tight ends, and they just weren't taking Musgrave, and I was like, like there are a lot of other guys out there that may fit the system. Like you can probably get someone deep that you shouldn't be able to. That's
And that's what I'm saying. Like, why spend that heavy draft pick to fill an already impacted wide receiver room? And then that guy is naturally, because of the position he plays, going to command more money for a lesser talent than drafting a tight end that shouldn't be there later. And he can still contribute in the run game and can still be a bigger passing weapon than even what Cole Kmet is right now for the Bears. That's a way to weaponize your passing attack more than just, oh, well, let's just add another wide receiver to the room. And either it's going to bump Valus or it's going to take time out of Mooney or Claypool. Like, there's just no need for it.
and this class also offers a lot of different options there. They got blockers, they got two-way tight ends. It's a good class, but we're going to go ahead and move on to everybody's favorite and the thing that honestly we need this year. Everybody talks about it. Offensive line protection, and we'll go to tackle first. I mean, tackle's the spot that it's premium in the NFL, and it's if you're on Twitter right now, you're gonna hear about our right tackle spot. There's no way you're not. So there's so many guys at tackle. I think it's not an overly great tackle class, but I do think it's above average. I think it's a good tackle class where you can find some players that fit your system. It's a little top heavy, not super top heavy, but more the talent is more in the top 50 than beyond that in my opinion. Jordan, take it away.
I'm smirking because I know I'm going to get dragged on this. You're going to probably see it throughout the comments and everything else. But to me, tired is Paris Johnson. I know every Bears fan's like, oh, just put him at 9 and let's just send the draft card in. And again, I want to be very clear. Just because I'm tired of a player doesn't mean that I think that they're a bad player. I just think that Paris Johnson's being mocked as the best tackle in this class because of traits and what he can be. And that's not a bad way to scout. But right now, I don't see a player that provides the refinement or the specialty in specific areas the way that you get with, like, for example, my first tackle on the board, Dewan Jones, who we can talk about, but even Anton Harrison, who I have a big crush on. And to me, I see Paris Johnson as more of a moldable ball of clay. Again, what can that be? That's the enticing part. But to sit there and say, I'm going to take this unfinished project at number 9 and slot him in immediately when there's plenty of it on tape where he's surrendering his anchor and getting pushed back. And yes, he recovers well, but to me, I think he's more of a finesse player. I don't think he mauls the way that I'd hope a tackle would look. And if you're talking about just an athletic tackle, you can get others that I'm going to talk about here in a second. So to me, that's kind of the tired option for the tackle. Wired, I would obviously say Dewan Jones, but I have to be clear. We're talking Bears here. Dewan Jones doesn't stand a chance for the Bears, not a scheme fit.
Agreed.
So to me, I have to go Anton Harrison. Anton Harrison, to me, the left tackle out of Oklahoma, is a guy that, if there's a little bit of a comparison, it's probably why I like them both. Dewan Jones is a huge refrigerator of a man that came from playing basketball. And the reason that's important is you get these big athletes that show good footwork. You're dribbling that ball between your legs and pulling different Euro steps and things like that sort. You got to have the footwork for it. So Anton Harrison's that same player, came from playing basketball. Went to Oklahoma, has been played a couple games at right tackle, played some mostly left tackle, but his pass pro is exceptional. You're talking about a player that frankly shut down Felix Anudike-Uzomah from Kansas State all the way to. I mean, he had some good spars with Will McDonald from Iowa State, and Will got the best of him sometimes, but most of the time Anton was shutting him down. And his anchor is incredible. Doesn't really lose in pass pro. He's enough of, again, that's that basketball background where he's enough of an athlete to fit the Bears scheme. So to me, that would be the wired pick if they were to. I don't really know if I even need it at 9, but I got to be honest. If it was Anton Harrison at 9 over Paris Johnson, I would be much more comfortable with that than Paris for what Anton looks like. And I know that that's not popular. I get it because Oklahoma is not what they used to be, and everybody watches Ohio State. But I would implore anybody to go watch the Anton Harrison film from Oklahoma. You can pick up some Wanye Morris while you're at it at right tackle. There's enough there to watch. So
Double
to me,
dip here,
that's
baby.
yeah. So that's the wired pick, and then to me, the inspired one. I'm going to go a little bit of a twofer here. Matthew Bergeron from Syracuse, the Canadian tackle, to me makes a lot of sense as an option. Although I will say, and I'll be brief with him because to me, I think I'm all about maximizing player potentials, which is why I like Skoronski to me as a guard. I wouldn't consider him in the tackle class. Bergeron to me is a guy that I think makes more sense as a zone blocking guard, but has tackle versatility. And to me, that's kind of that Tevin Jenkins player in that sense. Has some tackle ability, has that guard versatility, better as a guard. So to me, he's a decent option if you want to see if he can play right tackle. And then almost like if you fail at right tackle, Bergeron will move you into guard, whether that's, if Nate Davis goes down or Tevin's not here, anything like that. To me, the other option, though, and this is the real more inspired one, is Nick Saldiveri, tackle from right tackle, right guard. Again, that same mold. I think offensive lineman versatility is so important.
His arms are too
You,
short. I
I
love
see.
him
I know
at
you're.
guard though. I love him at guard though. He was at the
See, but like,
Senior
and
Bowl with Getsy. I mean,
I know, but to me, it's you. There's tape of him playing right tackle, taking care of the arc. Just I get it, it's Old Dominion tape, but to me, I think that versatility at offensive line is so important, and I feel much more comfortable about taking a swing on him at tackle than I would like Skoronski with that length. And so, and again, the tape of Skoronski is amazing, but like to me, Saldiveri is a guy that's similar mold of we need a right tackle in Chicago. Go ahead and try to compete for that right tackle job. If it doesn't work out, the worst case is we have a killer right guard option. And that's what I'm trying to build
that's
here.
where I
Is
think
right
they could
now,
double dip in this class. I mean,
yeah.
you
Well,
get
it's because
someone
right
like
now
that.
I get it. Tevin's your guard. Nate Davis is your guard. Yes, you've got Jatire Carter. There's options, but it's not like some super set position. So if you end up kind of double dipping, as you're talking about, Swifty, which is what if I take a tackle that at worst he fails and we have to put him in at guard? That's not a bad problem when guard isn't completely solved at the moment. So to me, that's the inspired pick is Nick Saldiveri, offensive tackle from Old Dominion.
Awesome. Couple quick points there. Bergeron, I think his arms are also a little short. I think they're right around where Tevin's are. They're like right over
Yep.
33 inches. Where I mean, he meets the minimum, but Poles probably wants him longer. So I've been trying to find more guys that fit Poles' profile. And then me and Jordan talked a little bit before the show. Counterpoint there on Paris Johnson Jr.'s. We do agree he's one of the best I've ever seen at his ability to recover. Jordan's right. He does get beat on tape a lot, but it was my favorite thing about him is when he gets beat with a move, his ability to recover and counter that, and he could get beat badly and not give up a pressure. So I took that as I think he has all the tools to be a top 10 pick, like a guy who, I mean, he could even go to the Raiders, in my opinion. I think he could go top 7. I see all the tools and traits there. But Jordan is right. There is a little bit of projection, but the thing with me is none of that projection were things that can't be coached.
Absolutely. Well, and that's let me be very clear because I think this is important too. Is this is again we can always say it's like one man's opinion, but I think too is it's how you prefer football to be played. Like there's nothing wrong with zone, but if I had it my way, the Chicago Bears would be playing gap scheme. They wouldn't be a zone blocking team because I'd be wanting a guy like DeJuan Jones. Like it's a funny joke, but like the truth is like the whole "you want to see a dead body" meme. That's the DeJuan Jones play. Like go watch DeJuan Jones just murder people on the football field.
He does,
Either
though.
he's just
It's
driving
a
you into the
monster.
ground on a snatch technique, or I mean, you got everybody loves Jalen Carter. He was killing Jalen Carter in the playoffs. So That's what I like football. I like maulers. I like players where my favorite brand of offensive football, Swifty, is this is what we're gonna do. What are you gonna do about it?
Yep.
Hey,
I mean,
hey,
I
yeah,
like
this
we're
is
gonna
what we're
punch
gonna
you in the
do.
mouth. It's that 49ers style. They do it a
Yes,
lot.
it's
I mean, they punch. They're like, we're gonna come out and we're gonna punch you in the mouth and we're gonna
and
run
to
it down your
me,
throat. Can you stop it? I mean,
like Paris has all the athletic traits. That's why I get why Bears fans like him. But to me, I do think though that there's a little bit of tenacity that they want in Chicago the way that they had it in Green Bay. Like say what you will, but that offensive line in Green Bay, that's why they liked Lucas Patrick, that's why they liked Nate Davis. They come from these programs where we're going to beat the shit out of you. And what are you going to do about it?
yep.
And to me, Paris Johnson doesn't really show that on tape.
Hmm.
He's not a bully. He's not a brawler. He is much
I
more
see
of a
the
finesse
potential
player.
there. I see the potential there, but it's kind of you have to. It's a mentality almost. Like
Yeah,
I think I mean if you play on a line with Nate Davis and Tevin Jenkins and Braxton Jones and
you would hope.
you would hope, but you're right. It is a bit of a projection, but he's still my favorite tackle in the class. I do love Broderick Jones almost as much. It is a good tackle class, but the other spot on this line that's a huge hole. There's a Mustafa size hole. It's kind of just it's a musty topic in Chicago. That'd be the center position, the guy snapping to Justin Fields. And I have to say this very clearly because there's a guy in the comments who's been ragging me about this recently. But we have Lucas Patrick and Cody Whitehair at center now. So I am a little bit more comfortable. But I do think we still need to draft a center. I've said it all off season. I made one video the other day, and I didn't say in that 3 minute video that we need to draft a center. And this guy's just been harassing me. He's like Swift, we have to draft a center. And then in a video recently, I mentioned again, like I have all year, we got to draft a center. And he's like, this guy Swift, he's a fraud. He's only saying we need to draft a center because I told him to. And I'm like, so let me be clear, guys. We do need to draft a center, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But Jordan, let me know your thoughts on this position, the center
It,
position.
it's funny to hear you say that because I mean I think maybe hopefully if he's listening I'll be able to quell his concerns. I think I can find a way to parse kind of what he believes and what you believe with you, which is I agree with you that with Whitehair moving to center as a potential guy and then Patrick being healthy, like I know it's our job as fans that when Lucas Patrick didn't play well last year and he got injured, we just forget about him and act like he's the worst player ever. And fine, you can do
He's not
that, but
on the
I'm
team
telling you,
anymore. Yeah, no.
I'm telling you, like his
Everybody's
center
already
tape.
saved his cap space.
I know,
They've
like
already done it.
in Green Bay, Lucas Patrick was a solid center, so like I'm still not giving up on that guy. And Whitehair provides enough comfortability where I was a guy that was saying draft a center high before that was figured out. And now that you're saying you've got too deep at the position, I don't necessarily think it's as important as it used to be, which hurts me a little bit because I think to me center is the second most valuable position on the offensive line, behind left tackle or right tackle, depending on your QB's throwing arm. So you're not going to like this one, Swifty, because I know so many people like him, and I get it. It's the Joe Moore
Don't make
Award
me cry.
winners and all that. But to me, the tired name that it's now thankfully it's cooled down a little bit. But the tired name that I used to hear a lot was Oluwatimi.
Oh,
Forgive me if I'm butchering
not
that name, but
Olu.
that
That's
is
my guy. I thought you were
the
gonna say
Michigan
John
center. He's a
Michael
fine
Schmidt.
player. I just don't necessarily think that he's in the same class as John Michael Schmitz, Joe Tippmann, Luke Whippler, Steve Avila. So to me, he's a guy that I think would be a fourth, fifth round, maybe even later pick. I just don't see a lot of spectacular play from him. I don't think he's a smooth mover. I don't think that he is some stalwart in the center. I think that there was enough talent there and enough just kind of the way that they play ball there in Michigan that kind of helped him out. And like I said, not a bad player, but not a guy that I'm as high on. To me, the wired pick, and again, this is what I wanted, but as we talked about, it's not nearly as much of a need now considering you're too deep, is Joe Tippmann, center from Wisconsin. Everybody
Mhm.
talked about Ethan Pocic, the center from the Seahawks, and last year with the Browns as an option that they wanted. To me, Joe Tippmann is a guy that reminds me of a couple players, which is one is Ethan Pocic, the other is Josh Myers, the former center for Justin Fields at Ohio State, who's now in Green Bay. These big centers who are able to move. and have a nice wingspan that are able to corral and play in space and make contact at the second level and really are able to expand your running game, your playbook, and change the angles of the run game because of their mobility and ability to be able to be the puller on the pin and pull as opposed to having to crack back and let the guard pull. And so, to me, Joe Tippmann is the guy. It's my first center in the class above even John Michael Schmitz, and that's not new. Anybody that's followed me for a bit knows that. As far as the inspired pick, to me, it's hard not to talk about. I guess everybody's talking about Ricky Stromberg at the moment, so I'll go a little different. It's a little higher on the board, but I still don't necessarily think he gets talked about enough, which is Steve Avila, the guard slash center prospect from TCU. I think if he plays the pivot, is a solid player in his own right. He's a bigger boy, around 330. And I think that he plays with enough grit and Mauler's mentality. That's my type of center, but also shows enough mobility out in space to be able to be a zone player. Did some of that at TCU. And so to me, Steve Avila is a guy that I would say is an inspired pick. And of course, you can go down the list and we could talk about Jarrett Patterson or Ricky Stromberg or some of these other players. But I think that particularly when we're talking about Bears fans who have been, fascinated with centers for so long, you've almost hit all of those traditional names already.
So Jordan brought up a good point. There is this center class is really talented, and I agree 100% that I think the center is the second most important position. I would say maybe third. I mean, it's tough because I would say both tackle spots. I almost say right tackle's up there with left tackle sometimes, but the center is the guy who's making those calls. They're snapping the ball to your quarterback. They're identifying the mic. They're making the adjustments to the line. There's a lot that goes into that center position, and I do really think we need to solidify that position long term. And like Jordan said, I agree. It kind of sucks that we still have Lucas Patrick and that Cody Whitehair is going the position because all off season I've been leaning towards the guy I thought you were going to say tired because I don't feel like I've heard Olu's name enough. Like I try to throw Olu's name out there as much as I can because I feel like nobody's talking about him. Maybe we're hearing different things, but the name I'm hearing all the time is JMS. Like John Michael
Yeah.
Schmitz, John Michael Schmitz, John all off season. That's all I've heard is John Michael Schmitz. And to me, I'm like, the one thing I'm happy about now is I think now we have a higher chance of getting Oluwatimi instead of John Michael Schmitz because he's a guy who could be there in the fourth round.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I mean, and I totally understand it. I think the reason I didn't probably go with a John Michael Schmitz for tired is I can agree with you that he is talked about a lot. I guess part of the thing though with tired is I don't necessarily match with what the talk is, but to me with JMS, he's my center too in the class. So I do value him. I do view him as a solid
Oh, I
prospect.
think to me, I am at number one. So yeah, I think he's a
Okay.
plug and play. Like, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, to me, like, he's a very good player, which is why I can't necessarily be tired on him. Where, like, we've talked about the other guys, and I'm like, I just don't think that he's the class of what you're hearing from other people. So, to me, JMS is solid. But I think, yeah, I don't, maybe you'll hear this from other people, but I think I'll be one of a select few where you'll hear me say he's center too. And this is not like a week old take. This is something I've had for months where Joe Tippmann is my top center in the class, and it's not changing now. It's not changing on draft day. He to me is the guy that you should be taking if you want the pivot of the future. And to me, that's the important is you could talk about Whitehair and you could talk about Patrick and all that's fine and dandy, but I just really think I want a guy for Justin Fields that they can build a bond and connection with and go, okay, for the next 10 years, at the very least, 2 contracts through, you're going to be the guy that takes care of me and handles protections and makes sure that you're the leader, the quarterback of this offensive line unit, and you get everybody lined up right. You're making the right calls on the mic and different slide protections, and you're taking care of my butt, so that I can make sure that Claypool and everybody else is lined up correctly. So um, that's where you're talking about. It sucks a little bit that we're probably not going to get that high investment there, but
but
that's okay.
it's a
You
deep
you can find
class.
centers elsewhere.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I still think we have to take a center. We don't have to take one as early as I thought before, but like if we leave this draft and we don't take even late a guy like Jake Andrews or and Nick Saldivari even played some center at the Senior
Yep.
Bowl. I seen him taking some snaps, But if we don't take a guy late, Patterson and Stromberg are the two guys that aren't talked about enough. That were,
I love Jared Patterson. I think people
I
just
think, in
disrespect
normal
him.
years where it's not this stacked at center, those guys are probably day two picks, possibly fourth round. I mean, I think they could fall a little bit now just because there's so many guys ahead of them. But I like that about the center class, and I hope Ryan Poles does too, and he finds one of these guys and brings them in on day 2 or 3.
Yep.
And then, so that's the offense for us. And I do like how you mentioned Steve Avila. A lot of people, so many people don't think he's a center. Like I've talked to people on Twitter that I'm like, what about Steve Avila? They don't have him in their top 10 centers. Like, he's a guard. He's a guard. I'm like, how can you play 2 years a center and then 1 year a guard and now
Yeah,
you're a guard?
I know.
But yeah, Avila is a guy who definitely could be a center or a guard in the NFL. I love him. But we're gonna switch it up. We're gonna go to the defensive side of the ball. Um, and we're gonna start in the trenches because I mean, we came from the trenches. We're gonna stay in the trenches, and we got two choices here. We can go with the edge or the three tech. I think the three tech is the one that's on everybody's mind. Is that the one you want to go with first?
Yeah, let's do that first,
All right, I'm
because it
gonna let you
is.
get into the three tech, and you give me your guys, Jordan.
Yeah, it is the motor of the defense, as Coach Flus likes to talk about it. So I'm going to give a little bit of a twist here. The tired answer is Jalen Carter, but not for the reason that I think a lot of Bears fans are, which they're just tired of Jalen Carter because I don't know who got in their ear, but they think he's overrated. They think he's not the player that everybody says he is. To me, I'm just kind of tired of the Jalen Carter discourse when I think he is still one of the best players in the league. I put out my five blue chip players today. He was not one of them, but that to me, I was talking to Man About Tech, a fellow friend of the channel, and to me, Jalen Carter's honorable mention. He's right there. He's one of the best players in the class. So tired of kind of people besmirching his name for kind of the shroud of mystery that's been going on around him. Still think he's a great player. And so in some ways you could consider him like a wired pick if he was a Bear, but I'll vary it up there for you. So that's the tired pick. Um, the wired pick to me would be Zach Pickens. And we can take this in a variety of different ways. Kobe Turner or Carl Brooks, other players like that. But to me, Zach Pickens is a guy that I've been high on for months now, where former 5-star, he's a D tackle at South Carolina, has plenty of good tape. I think that the thing to forget about Zach Pickens at South Carolina is I don't really think he was playing with a ton in that front seven. Sure, they have Darius Rush and they have Cam Smith, but there wasn't a ton going on in the front seven to help him. Swifty, you and I were talking behind the scenes a little bit about Miles Murphy and Brian Brisset and all these other players. Where I'm like,
Oh
that
yeah.
Clemson D line, there's no reason why one of you guys shouldn't just be eating constantly because of all the talent you have around you. So to me, Zach Pickens didn't quite have that at South Carolina, but there's plenty of tape of him just sparring off with the best SEC offensive linemen and working them. There's a clip that was going around today of him just basically doing a full on sled drill, just killing Florida's center to drive him into the lap of Anthony Richardson. Had a battle with the left guard from Bama, who I'm forgetting the name of at the moment. But to me, he's just a baller, a great three tech option on that round two, round three range that I would be ecstatic if he was a Bear. And then the inspired one, I doubt you're going to hear this name pretty much anywhere else, but it's Desjuan Johnson, D tackle, three tech from Toledo. That's, like as I said, probably not a name you're going to hear, but to me, he's a game wrecker. If you're able to find or scour and find any Toledo film, I guarantee you'll love what you're seeing. He's a kind of a ball of knives and just wrecks shop playing at three tech for the Toledo University. And I think the benefit there, and I call it a weird connection, but I mean, you talk about Matt Eberflus and his being an alumnus of Toledo. I would like to imagine that he's got some eyes and a couple ears there at Toledo talking about, hey, we got this three tech option for you to play in your defense. And Desjuan Johnson to me is one of the most slept on prospects in the entire draft. And do not be surprised to hear his name called well before you hear it from anybody else there. So to me, Desjuan Johnson, I cannot bang that drum enough. And I know Bears fans, they're going to freak out if you don't get a three tech in the first, 3 or 4 picks. There is plenty, and I mean plenty of three tech options in this class. But to me, Desjuan Johnson would be a home run hit that if you don't know it, go find some tape on him. He's an incredible prospect.
Jordan got me. I did not know Desjuan Johnson. I could have lied, edited this, but I did not know Desjuan Johnson. I don't think I have him on my board. He's a three tech from Toledo. I will be watching tape on him. I also had a comment about the Jalen Carter thing. This is something me and Jordan have talked on a little bit as well. People put too much stock into pro days and the combine. I mean, they're basically the underwear Olympics. There are things you do there, but for most general managers, the combine is about medicals and interviews. They're testing any health concerns they have, and then they're getting to know your character. Sometimes guys can catch your attention when they test much more athletically than you thought they would, or they just absolutely blow up the combine like Adebaware or Anthony Richardson. But we already knew that most GMs already knew those guys were really athletic. Like, they didn't do anything that really blew people away. And this negative stuff on Jalen Carter, like, it's gotten out of control. I mean, he had a lot going on during those couple weeks. Like, I mean, a lot. Like, his name was getting dragged on the media. He had an arrest warrant issued. The guy had to go down and deal with police and then had a pro day a little bit later. He put on a little bit of weight. Like, he's a 21-year-old kid. That's just something I don't. If the tape is there and if the GM has the interviews with the guy and he's comfortable with them, Jalen Carter's a top 3 player in this class. I'm banging the hammer on that one all day. And then I love how you brought up Carl Brooks, Kobe Turner, some guys that 3 tech is that position that if it wasn't for right tackle, it'd probably be all anybody talked about. But until we fix the offensive line right now, that's a bigger priority for fans. But that 3 tech, there are some guys in this class. A part of it is it's probably the most talented edge class I've ever seen. And when you're looking at our defense and our system, a lot of those guys project to be 3 techs here. And the national media pundits will have them listed at edge. But when you talk to a guy like Jordan or some other guys who are smarter or know more about the Bears, they're going to tell you a lot of those guys listed as edge, like Keon White and Adetame Adebaware, are 3 techs in this defense. Like, they, even if the NFL draft pops up and it says Bears select defensive end Keon White, he's still probably going to be a 3 tech. Like, that's what matters. This 3 tech class is nice. I can't wait for the draft. And then next up, the deep one. I mean, this one, I don't know how many ways you could go here, Jordan, but
So hard to
defensive
pick
end.
this class.
It's This one is so tough. I mean, you could literally just ramble off names all
Yeah.
day. I mean, this is what I love though. I mean, people are still complaining he didn't do enough on the defensive line. This draft class is stacked, and that's what I'm happy about. If anything with free agency, it's that Ryan Poles set himself up to attack the trenches in this draft, and it's a strong draft for the trenches. So, defensive end, Jordan, what you got for me?
Yeah, this is the hardest position to pick, Swifty, because it's just names after the killer after killer after killer. And it's not easy to pick a tired prospect on any of them. But I mentioned it a little bit earlier. I'd have to say I'm tired on the Miles Murphy talk. Probably a good player, has all the potential in the world. And I don't mean to bring up a sore spot for Bears fans, but the comps I have, and comes off as helmet scouting. It's not meant to, but I think it's just the natural way my mind thinks about it. To me, what Miles Murphy reminds me of is Gaines Adams, rest in peace, former Bears selection, and kind of Daquan Bowers, probably a forgotten pick by many, but was supposed to be a top 10 pick, and I believe had some knee issues and ended up with the Buccaneers. But similar type of player, that kind of edge, but has the ability to kind of even line up inside if you need to. And I'll be very quick and concise with this. But the thing with Miles Murphy is, I don't know how you can be on a Clemson defensive line with Brian Brsay and Tyler Davis, KJ Henry, and all these other killers out there, and you're not just taking advantage and just reaping the benefits of these one-on-one matchups. You're getting the ability to just win off the edge and cause havoc. And sure, he has a few splash plays here and there, but to me, it didn't look nearly as good. And I will give a tiny caveat, which is that I understand that Clemson defense was a shell of itself with Brett Venables gone. So it looks better in 21 tape than it does 22. But to me, Miles Murphy is a prospect I'm tired on. Wired to me, this is Swift. I know that you'll kind of give me my clout here, but I've been on the Lucas Van Ness train
Oh yeah.
for months at this point. I think I was one of the first talking about him as a Bears fit, and I would be absolutely wired if he ended up a Chicago Bear. I'd take him at 9, and there's no hesitation about that. I think that you're talking about a guy who you want to talk about the whole Paris Johnson. He's just a ball of clay and what he can be. That is Lucas Van Ness. He's an athlete. He's got and here's the thing: like, what was the issue with Paris Johnson? Is I don't know what his calling card is. Well, the calling card of Lucas Van Ness is he's just a brawler. He will bull rush you, and even if you know what's coming, that's again what we were talking about. Swifty is I like my style of ball to be like, this is what I'm going to do, and you can't stop it. What are you going to do about it? And it didn't matter if it was Peter Skoronsky, if it was Paris Johnson, if it was any of the others. He was just putting his arms and his hands into the chest of those tackles and putting them on skates and escorting him to the back of the to the lap of the quarterback. And so to me, Lucas Van Ness is a guy that I've comped to Ryan Kerrigan. And I know that's not a sexy name, but Ryan Kerrigan to me is one of the most productive and one of my favorite edges of the last era. And to me, he is everything Ryan Kerrigan was with the athletic upside that allows him to be this multiple ball of clay that can do anything. And he's got a limited toolbox. But again, if you trust your defensive line coach and you trust your defensive minds in this Chicago Bears team, he can be your strong side defensive end that can even scoot inside to play 3 tech if you needed to on passing downs, and just completely wreck shop on guards and tackles. And so to me, Lucas Van Ness represents the perfect definition of a wired player. Finally, for inspired, I know that this is not a name that many will probably know, but it's Dylan Horton, the defensive end from TCU. To me, he's a try hard player, a lot of effort on his tape, 6'4, 257 at the combine. Should kind of be a nice familiar name. But to me, I promise it's not just because I'm a Bears fan, but it's just kind of who he reminds me of is Alex Brown, kind of a Bears very good legend, if you will. Same, relatively same size, same play style. Would more slot in as your weak defensive end. Again, he's not the most spectacular player, but I think that again, this is that inspired pick. So if you go and watch yourself some Dylan Horton tape, I would be hard pressed to think that you'd walk away disappointed. I think that he's a solid, productive player that gets the most out of his body, his frame, his ability.
Yeah, Jordan, I mean, defensive end, that's there were so many different ways you could have went there at the end. I was waiting. I didn't know Dylan Horton was the guy. I thought this could be BJ Thompson, this could be Baldonado, this could be KJ Henry. Like there's so many guys. So many guys. Like one guy that I want to just mention because I haven't heard his name talked about at all as a defensive lineman is Dante Stills. Like he's a guy who I saw him at the Shrine Bowl, and the guy's unblockable. Like, just so good. I love him. But this defensive line class, specifically the edge, there's going to be talent on the board all day, every day. So my biggest thing is don't freak out if we don't take one early. We could take 2 edges on day 3 and still come away with some guys with some potential. I love it. So edge is the one position out of all of them that I'd say this is why I'm okay with not taking Lucas Van Ness up there. Like, I know you're a big Lucas Van Ness guy, but when I look at it, I'm like, the edge class is much deeper than all the other ones. The biggest knock on Lucas Van Ness, and I will say this, Jordan is a guy, he's been on Lucas Van Ness before anyone. He was telling me Lucas Van Ness was a first round pick when other guys had Lucas Van Ness not in their top
In like
150.
the fourth round.
Yeah, I was like, they don't even have Lucas Van Ness in the top 150. I was like, I gotta watch this guy. I remember Jordan when he first told me about him, and I was like, he's not in Daniel Jeremiah's top 150, or no, I think it was someone. It wasn't Jeremiah because Jeremiah's is always really good. It was someone else's top 150. I was like, he's not even in there, and Jordan's got this guy in the top 20. I was like, I gotta watch more tape on him, but he never started a game at college at Iowa.
I
That's his biggest thing. But his
That's
best
my
football.
tired conversation.
Yeah. His best football is ahead of him. And that's one of those things where you draft a guy for what they're going to do,
Yep.
not what they've done. And then
You're trying to thread that perfect needle of like, can I get them at a point where it's very clear what they've done is comforting enough to say I'm going to select them, but
that
at
I
the
know what
same
they can
time,
do.
their best ball is ahead of them. And like to me, that's what you're getting with Van Ness. That's what you're getting with like a Roshan Johnson. That's what you're getting with these other names, these Mingos. Like there's enough there to be like, I like that, but it wasn't unlocked. And I'm drafting him now, and I trust my guys to unlock it. And I know that that's risky, but with a guy like Van Ness, I mean, it's just I'm telling you, like I'd be surprised if he just becomes like this. I'm not again, it's never going to be sexy, but I'm telling you, against the best tackles and the best players in college, was just whooping their ass and making like highlight tapes of them just looking stupid. And do not be surprised if that happens in the NFL.
I'd love to see it, man. Lucas Van Ness, a guy. I mean, he's got that Herculean build. He looks like Hercules. He's got that
That's his
nickname.
nickname.
He's going to be a fan favorite wherever he goes. People are going to like him. I mean, when you look at him just from a physical standpoint and what he does on the field, I mean, what he projects to be, he looks like a Bosa. And even drawing a comparison like that, you have to take the guy seriously and give him a second look. So I love it. The defensive line talent is just stacked, and that's my biggest takeaway from this draft. And then linebackers next. So are we going to take a linebacker high? No, it's not going to happen. We're not going to take a linebacker high. I don't see it with T.J. Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds and Jack Sanborn. But you don't have to give all of them if you want a linebacker. But I at least want an inspired guy.
Yeah. I can do that. So to me, I think I will say tired to me is probably Trenton Simpson.
Yeah.
I like Trenton Simpson. I just don't think that I don't mean to be like super analytical here, but when you think about linebackers and off-ball linebackers that come into the league, it's a different game now than what it was back then, 10, 15 years ago. And you're seeing more 220, 230-pound linebackers drafted now more than ever. Before it used to be 240, 250. And to me, it's Simpson's got all the athletic builds and everything, but the thing is, you are now drafting and you're more okay drafting athletes at off-ball linebacker. But there's got to be a moment where you see some level of IQ and football intelligence and instincts and a nose for the ball. And to me, I don't think I see that nearly enough in Trenton Simpson's game. So I know, like, Nomad's probably a commenter on your channel, and I know a few others that really like Trenton Simpson. And again, it's not like he's a bad player. I just don't think that he's a linebacker one the way that everybody's talked about.
I
And I'll
don't
give you
think
an
it's a
example.
strong linebacker class, to be honest. At
Well,
least
no,
not
and I
top
mean,
heavy.
and everybody will tell you about Jack Campbell, and I could wax poetically about Jack Campbell. And I mean, he's one of the you want to talk about instinctive and shows. I know I don't think his testing now. Jack Campbell's testing numbers. It was a little sidebar, but I think Jack Campbell's testing numbers looked like Brian Urlacher. But I don't think his tape looks like he's playing like Brian Urlacher. It's just I don't see the same athleticism on his tape that the testing showed. But you want to talk about like instincts and finding the ball, and that's what you're looking for out of a linebacker. So a little sidebar on Jack Campbell. I mean, I could again wax poetically about him. To me, the inspired pick, and we'll go a little different here because I would typically give you wired, but the inspired pick to me that I think that he's getting a little bit of buzz, so I'm happy about it. Is Deion Henley. Deion Henley is the off-ball linebacker from Washington State. I want to say he was a former DB, and that shows up. And this is I was high on Christian Harris last year too, former safety. And to me, that's what you're getting is these guys that they understand passing concepts. They are instinctive because they're a DB. They understand route spacing, which is important in this passing era, but they also understand having that top down view of a defense as a DB, how to attack runs and angles to attack runs. And to me, Deion Henley is an athlete. He's lengthy and shows that instincts that I think are going to be necessary. And I think that he's a player that can probably be shot right out of a gun to start in a good, productive way. So to me, that's the inspired pick. And then the wired pick, I got to say, to me, it's DeMarvion Overshawn.
Okay. Yeah.
DeMarvion Overshown, Agent 00 for Texas, is a freak. I mean, this is another former DB, but this is a guy that's just got all of the skills, the athletic traits, hawking dudes down, can rush the passer, fly sideline to sideline. To me, that's the wired pick where I don't know how any fan base could be unhappy about getting Agent 00 on your team because it's kind of, like as a Bears fan, we just got Tremaine Edmonds. It's kind of that same thing, which is like I have Mr. Unlimited at linebacker, where there's really not a lot that this guy can't do. He's got the length, he's athletic, he'll fill the run. Like he plays with his hair on fire. Like to me, I think DeMarvion Overshown reminds me a lot of Darius Leonard
Okay. Oh
and
yeah.
kind of that maniac player where he's just running around finding the ball. and has those former DB skills to be able to locate and find the ball in an effective manner.
He's
So those are the
he's one of
that's
my
the
favorite
picks.
linebackers in the class for sure. And I love your points there because both those guys are former safeties, and that's kind of I love those kind of linebackers. Guys like Tremaine Edmonds who can move, but guys, if you think recently in the NFL, guys like Isaiah Simmons for the Cardinals, one of my
Yep.
favorite players to come out in a while. He hasn't really lived up to all the hype yet, but kind of player I really like. But at linebacker for me, I think for us, I think it's going to be someone late in the draft. I'd look for like a
Yeah.
Servakia Dennis or an Isaiah Land, someone along those lines, or a what's the
I
guy
love
from?
me some Aubrey Miller.
I
Like
was just
that's
gonna.
that's
I was saying what's the guy from Jackson State in my head. That
yeah,
was the other name there in my head. But yeah, Aubrey
Aubrey Miller.
Miller's the other guy. I think one of those guys late in the draft, or even if one of them slips undrafted, like that's where I think we'll probably go at linebacker. Is going to be a late guy. And then Jack Campbell. I know we got a lot of fans of Jack Campbell on the channel, so they're gonna appreciate you talking about him. Big
Yeah.
Jack Campbell fans out. We'll go ahead and now next up is gonna be cornerback. I mean, this is if not for edge, this is also one of the deepest corner classes in a long time. There's so many guys here that you can find day 1, day 2, day 3. There's gonna be good players. So Jordan, give me your guys at cornerback.
Yeah, this is hard because I do truly believe that Christian Gonzalez, Devin Witherspoon, Joey Porter. I do believe they're the best in the class. So it's not. It's like picking against your children here. So I have a hard time saying wired or excuse me, tired. But I will say tired on this. Let me switch it a bit. I am tired that my man Joey Porter Jr. is not getting talked about as the best corner in this class. And I get it. It's testing season. It's look at what Christian Gonzalez can do and how athletic he is and all that's special. But Christian Gonzalez is playing against what is it, Pac-12 or Pac-10, whatever we are now, talent of wide receiver. And I get it's Jordan Addison, but who's it after that? It's so to me, I think when you talk about and Devin Witherspoon's a dog, don't get me wrong, but he had a lot of benefits playing in that Illinois secondary when you had Martin, you had Brown, you had Witherspoon. Last year you had Kirby Joseph. Like there's a lot of talent there, and that doesn't take away Devin Witherspoon's awesome,
But it
but
allows him to play more aggressive.
yes, Joey Porter Jr. is my type of guy. Which what that means is again, I hate to be skull on brand, but like I have a type, which that type is again. I'm gonna put my hands into your chest. I'm gonna jam you and you're not going to go anywhere because I'm a condor. I've got these long arms that I can just shoot out, and you're going to be a statue because you're just not moving. And I'm not super fast. I'm not wicked fast like Christian Gonzalez, but I'm fast enough to stay in your hip pocket. And even if you beat me, I've got these long arms to sit there and block off a pass. So to me, Joey Porter he's Namdi Asamoah talent. He's Jalen Ramsey. Like he's that guy that on the back of a trip set or on any legit X receiver, I don't even sweat. I don't fear it. I mean, you don't have to believe. Go turn on the Ohio State tape. Everybody wants to cream their pants about Marvin Harrison Jr. I get it. Go watch Joey Porter, and it wasn't all game. Marvin Harrison had a great game. Let me be very clear. Marvin Harrison had a great game because he moved away from Joey Porter because Joey Porter put that ass on lockdown.
He
So,
did, he did. And there's
like,
also, I mean, when you're drafting a guy who's the son of a Hall of Famer, he grew up around football. I mean, he knows
yes,
the game. I mean, I feel like Joey Porter's one of the safest picks in the whole draft.
he's a blue chipper to me. Like to me, it's one of those guys where, and I get it. We live in a quarters world where everybody's playing zone. But the brass tacks, when it all breaks down, we play cat coverage. Hey, you go cover that cat, and you go cover that cat, and you got your guy, you got that cat. That's Joey Porter. Joey Porter, like, hey, I don't know what we're doing something else, but right now I just need you to put the clamps on Marvin Harrison. Yeah, no problem, coach. I got it.
Yep.
So to me, Joey Porter Jr. is not getting enough respect. I get he's Mr. First Round pick, but he is not even remotely discussed in the same way that Christian Gonzalez and Devin Witherspoon is, and that bothers me. So that's the tired pick. The wired pick to me is, and I'll switch it up a bit because I would typically say the inspired is. I would say I would be wired though if Keitrell Clark,
Oh,
cornerback from Louisville, was a Bear selection. This is again more of a down the board pick, and that's like, wasn't that supposed to be the inspired? I'll get there. Keitrell Clark to me is you're talking about what about that nickel position? I get it.
I
Kyler
think he
Gordon can
could go
be
day 2.
Yeah, well, like, and I get it. I know that Kyler Gordon can play nickel. I'm just stubborn.
You're
I
still
want
trying to
Kyler Gordon.
force Kyler out the nickel. I see
I
it,
want
man.
to I want Kyler on the back because this is, everybody likes Christian Gonzalez. You know who Christian Gonzalez reminds me a lot of? Kyler Gordon, the athletic freak who's able to match and be shifty and smooth, fluid hips. And he's an athlete and he's got good body control. Yeah, put that guy on the outside and let him just mirror receivers left and right and be the shiftiest of them. Let him cover the Zay Flowers, the Josh Downs,
I
those
think Gordon's good enough to play either spot. I do think he's good enough to play on the outside if we can land a nickel corner like that, and that's
And that's Keitrell Clark. Like Keitrell Clark, back to him is he's a heady player from Louisville that played the nickel, understood when to crash down on screens and little bubbles. A heady player that communicated on that defense. To me, he is the wired selection at nickel corner. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I like Trey Hodges Tomlinson from TCU, and it reminds me of Tim Jennings and all these other guys, but Keitrell Clark to me is the nickel option that I would be ecstatic about for the Bears because I think you can. I don't want to say he totally reminds me of Kenny Moore, but it's not too far off from that type of player. And so I think the issue is the arm length, but I think that if Flus was to take kind of a chance, that would be the one I'd hope for, and Alan Williams. The inspired pick for me, and this is a little different, but the inspired pick, and is another guy I don't think gets talked about enough. He is relatively mocked in the first round, but again, seemingly doesn't get talked about with Julius Brents and Emmanuel Forbes and Kaylee Ringo and Deontay Banks. But to me, Cam Smith is the guy that I don't think gets frankly talked about enough. You're talking about an SEC corner with good length. He's a dog. He's scrappy at the point of attack. Will fight you along the entire route. Attack the catch point as violently as a receiver would. Fights for the ball. Mirror exception. Smith is a guy that makes a ton of sense.
heck yeah. I love the corner class. I mean, it's so deep. There's so many guys in this class. You're gonna find them on day one, day two, day three, and it's probably the deepest corner class in the past decade, easily for me. But that's one of the things. The Bears have so many options in this draft. A lot of drafts are top heavy, and they get labeled as good drafts. This draft isn't as top heavy as some drafts, but I believe the COVID effect has really contributed to these last 2 years being just overly deep at a lot of different positions. And this class is it's going to go down as a really deep class. I think there's going to be more than normal. You're going to find starters in day 2 and day 3, and I'm excited for it. We're about a week away, so I mean the NFL draft is coming, and I'm super excited. Jordan, do you have any other takes or any other points
I
you
mean, I
want
know
to make?
we can do safety real
Oh
quick.
yeah, safety.
Safety's a hard one, I will say though, because to me, like if we're just talking about tired safeties, like I don't think that there's a safety really being talked about as like some world
It's not
beater.
a top heavy safety class for sure.
No. I mean, I'll for the sake of the exercise, I will make up a name and not in like some totally baseless argument, but Brian Branch is a guy that's seen as safety number one, and I don't really have any issue. He's a solid player. He's probably the first one I'd take, but I do think that there's a little bit of it's Nick Saban loves his star defender and he loves his safety, and it's the Alabama guy, and it's Minka, and it's Eddie, and he's good.
Yeah.
I don't think he's like world beater status, and I think people again fall for that. He's the Alabama Nick Saban's pet, so that must mean he's legendary, and I don't necessarily agree with that. To me, the wired pick because it's just hard not to love him is Sidney Brown, safety out of Illinois. Again, I don't even. It's not. It's not. This isn't necessarily Bear centric. I don't know exactly where he would fit, but I will say this about the Bears: I don't necessarily think that safety shouldn't be on the table. You're talking about Eddie Jackson, who's coming off of an injury, and Jaquan Brisker, who I love Jaquan Brisker. I think he's actually much more of a Swiss Army knife than people realize. Like, if you told me that they were taking Sidney Brown, I would say Sidney Brown would probably be my strong safety, and then I would transition to Quan Brisker to Eddie's spot if they were to leave, like to release Eddie or move on from Eddie. And the reason for that is Brisker has enough range to play deep. Sidney can do it, but he's just a heat-seeking missile. So to me, he's a guy that I want roaming around in the box as that overhang defender and just causing havoc. So Sidney Brown to me is again a wired pick. You got to love his tape, got to love his play. If you like Devin Witherspoon, I don't know how you were watching Devin Witherspoon, not seeing Sidney Brown. make plays at safety. So that's the option there. And then to me, I'll give a little bit of a three-headed monster for the inspired. Um, I guess I'll call it the forgotten inspired, which is Brandon Joseph, safety from Notre Dame, used to be at Northwestern, picked off Justin Fields in that bowl game. I think people forget about him, but I think he is kind of that. He's again that much more finesse player. Reminds me a lot of like Eddie Jackson falling to the fourth. Again, not saying he's Eddie Jackson, but Brandon Joseph is a guy to me that would make a ton of sense as that successor or heir apparent if you're thinking about a future beyond Eddie Jackson. Beyond that, though, it's hard not to talk about Daniel Scott and Trey Dean.
Trey
Daniel
Dean, that's
Scott,
my guy. I
yeah,
was gonna mention Trey Dean if you didn't. There were three guys I was gonna mention were Trey Dean, Chamari Connor, and Christopher Smith.
yeah. Oh, Chris Smith's awesome.
Yeah,
Like that's probably one that doesn't get talked about enough. And let me put it this way: I'll touch real quick on Chris Smith. What people feel about Brian Branch is how I feel about Chris Smith.
I
Like
like
that's
that.
that's the
I
swap.
can I like that take. Yeah,
Yeah. So to me, Daniel Scott, safety out of California, big player, strong safety, pretty heady player. When you want to talk about getting Elijah Hicks from California, he'll tell you all about Daniel Scott and the type of player he is. And around the ball enough, not a fun player to watch. It's not like he's super impactful, but can contribute on special teams and is enough of a player to play in a kind of a quarters heavy scheme. Not a super rangy, but can definitely play the back half. And then you talk about Trey Dean, safety from Florida, and I know the big knock on him is his hands, and he can't capitalize on balls hitting his hands and turning them into interceptions. But it's a different story during Shrine Bowl week, and by
I
all
was gonna say
accounts,
that's the
everything.
second guy you just mentioned that tore up the Shrine Bowl. It was Trey
Yeah,
Dean and Kytrell Clark. Both those were probably two of my favorite guys from the entire Shrine Bowl week. Like they both killed it.
yep. And I mean, you're talking about a guy like Trey Dean, where I think it's so easy to look at that Florida defense and see them get shredded, and man, there's no talent there. But to me, Trey Dean is kind of, I don't want to say it's Jaquan Brisker. They're different players, and Brisker's much better. But to me, Dean is a guy that can do a lot of things, which is he has most of the range to play free if you wanted him to. Now that's not where again we're trying to maximize positions. Like where is this player going to be best? I think he's best as kind of a roaming strong safety. He can definitely play back and play with range in the deep half, but he also can come down and hit and line up in the box as a decent player that come up and hit you.
That's exactly
Can,
why I like him as a third safety, like
yep,
because he could back up both spots. And I mean, but I also think he has that potential with the Bears fit. He's a guy who could take over for Eddie, or like you said, he could move over to strong safety, and Brisker could come to free safety. I tend to have a little bit different opinion than you on that one. I love Brisker's fit at strong safety just due to how he attacks the run game and his ability in the box. So I would probably want to keep him at strong safety and try to draft a free safety.
and there's no problem there either. It's just the one thing I wish people would realize though is that Eddie is special for his range, assuming that this leg injury is not going to take away from that, and his instincts and ability to bait and read passing
He's a true.
concepts. So
I love his center. He can play center field too. I mean,
that's what I mean, and, like, I know you and I know this, Swifty, and I think I'd like to think most Bears fans understand this, but not every safety is built the same, and, like, it is truly a different game to have to be the sole line of defense, the last line, single field. You are having to chase and hawk down the far hash because there's that corner out there. Like that's a different ball game that not every safety can open up their hips and explode. That it just doesn't work that way. So you have to really kind of hone in on who's a guy that has that level of range, and that's just the athletic ability. That's what separates Eddie. Is Eddie's that athletically, but he also has the mental part of the game to process and understand how to bait quarterbacks and thinking, yeah, you don't think I can get over there, but watch this.
yep.
And that's the other aspect that, we can talk about, oh, just draft this safety. It's like, no, it's a very specific fit, a very specific role if you're trying to replace Eddie. And so trying to just say, like, oh, we'll just draft somebody and throw him there and keep Brisker. It certainly can happen, Swifty. I'm just like, it takes a special prospect to get there.
That's why. I mean, and Eddie's also when you also think about that, why replacing him could be on the docket is I love Eddie Jackson. I think he could be a leader of the secondary for another couple more years, but he's by far the oldest starter on our entire team right now. So, I mean, I don't think we have another guy over 28, and he's 31.
Yeah, no, I would say, like, he is entering the back 9, like, maybe a year, maybe 2 left of prime,
Hmm.
maybe,
Maybe.
but you're definitively entering the
After
back
that, it's a
9.
steep drop off. When you
It
33 for a guy whose game is based on speed
speed,
and
yep,
instincts, like
and that's the thing, like, I'm not saying that the foot was it a foot? I think it was a
yeah, he
foot.
had the foot, yeah.
And that's what I'm saying, like, I'm not saying that the foot is gonna totally derail him, but I'll tell you what, like, you wanna injure somebody like Eddie Jackson, I'd rather you injure him almost any other body part than his foot. Like, it's just that scares me a little bit on the recovery.
No, sure. I have heard good things about that. I think Eddie is going to bounce back and will be fine, but that is something that as Bears fans, I mean, our eyes towards the future here, and Eddie's a guy. Right now, we have too many holes. It's not a top priority. But once you get to day 3, if the best player on the board is a free safety that you think has
Yep.
potential to develop, you take that guy and you don't worry
I'm
about it.
and I'm telling you, like, call it what you want, but if you go back and look at Matt Eberflus and his indie personnel, they were consistently trying to plug holes at safety. Like, they were just drafting them. It was Julian Blackman, and then it was Kari Willis, and then
Malik
they
Hooker, yeah.
I mean, yeah, I'm telling you, like, they were just going and going and going and going and going. So, to me, I just tend to think that safety is something that if you're thinking they're not going to take one, look no further than last year. I mean, I don't, not that I'm super high on Elijah Hicks, but they were sitting there like, look, needs our team is pretty bone stock empty, and we don't have a lot going on, but with one of our 10 or 11 picks, we're just going to throw one at the dartboard with California safety Elijah Hicks. Like,
Yep.
they do that. They like their safeties.
I mean, also, I mean, yeah, safeties. It's also a tough position. They can play special teams. You also have the skill sets where they're athletic. They can play the run and the
Mhm.
pass. I think in this league, one thing that's interesting with the way Poles and Eberflus are building this is it's almost like on defense they're building it from the back half and then coming forward, and they're
Yeah,
taking away the pass first. I like it. It takes some time to come together though, and we'll see how it works. But I couldn't be more excited for the way our secondary looks going forward. It
absolutely.
because we're gonna add a corner in this draft. I mean, at some point he's gonna add a corner, and when I look at this draft, I'm like, you can get a corner in the 5th round. And it could be a guy who could still be a potential starter or find a nickel, like you said, if Kytrell Clark or there's a
That's
couple of
like yeah, I'm glad you're high on him. To me, like I'm high on him, and I think somebody will be, but that's where I was thinking he's going to be like a fourth or fifth rounder.
with corners, it's so tough for me to get a grasp on outside like the top 5 where any of them are going to go. Like think about guys like I mean Julius Brents and Darius Rush and Riley Moss. These are guys that when you look at them on the cornerback board, it's like, huh, they're probably going to go in like the 4th or 5th round. But there's also guys above them that I think they're better than. Those guys could get pushed up, and there's some other guys that could fall down. And it's just going to be so interesting. And it's going to be the same way at edge, defensive end. There's going to be certain guys that those classes are so deep that there's going to be 2 or 3 guys when a team's picking. And the national media and even me and you might be like, this guy's the best guy, player A. But that team's going to look at him and say, these 3 players are all very similar on our board. Player C is the one that's our best system fit. And it's where this class is so deep, there's going to be guys dropping that even us sitting here today, we're in a week or two, we're going to be sitting here
Mhm.
like, wow, I didn't see this guy here on
It
day 3.
happens every year.
And I'm so excited. That's one of the things I'm most excited about is going into day 3, having that first pick of round 4. I think it's going to be huge. I think there's going to be a really good player still on the board that shouldn't be there, and we're going to be sitting there overnight looking at, you know how it is as a draft pundit or draft fan. Each day the day ends, you're looking at your board and figuring out who are the top guys on the board for the next day. It's something that almost all draft fans do, and when you have that first pick the next day, that's hey, it's
No,
gonna be fun, man. I have so much fun talking to you always, Jordan. We could probably talk for
always.
like 5 hours, man. Did you have any other points or tidbits you wanted to throw out there before you go?
No, Swifty, as always, I said at the top, I still mean it. I appreciate you always having me on. It's always a blast talking ball with you, Chicago Bears. Otherwise, I know we do all Chicago Bears on camera. We'll talk other teams even off. So I appreciate the time, the opportunity, and Hopefully this video does well. Hopefully people enjoy it. If you're looking for more information on me, looking for takes, I mean, I'm releasing rankings on draft, blue chip players, done any discussions, Bears and otherwise. If you're for some reason here from a different team, I can certainly talk ball with you and your team too. You can find me at Jordan T. Silvera on Twitter. It's right down there. And then guess I'll see you all around and come draft weekend.
Awesome, man. Jordan, much love, man. Can't wait for the draft. You'll probably be joining me for the draft at some point too. But always great talking to you, man. Bear down.
Bear down.
Swifty in the house!
Thanks for watching Swift Sports Network. Like and subscribe for daily Chicago Bears updates, knowledge over narratives.